on the Move.
And then it's been kind of our experience as it's like after getting to know people, and sometimes after a couple hangouts or being in our home or something, then you discover like, oh, like Jesus is active in this person. You know, like Jesus is present and he's kind of hosting us together. And that's been kind of our experience. Like treasure, the kingdom is like treasure hidden in a field. And we just like stumble upon it.
In the Gospel of Mark, we read that one of the teachers came to Jesus and noticed that he had given some good answers to difficult questions. So he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important one? The most important one, Jesus answered, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than this. Well said, teacher, the man replied. You are right in saying that God is one, and that there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart and with all your understanding and with all your strength. And to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. When Jesus heard that he had answered wisely, he said to him, You are not far from the kingdom of God. You are listening to God on the Move, a Lausanne Movement podcast, and this is a story of how to find the kingdom of God in our neighborhoods, like a treasure hidden in the field. The voice you heard earlier was Sam Kaminga. He and his wife Ruth made it their mission to find the kingdom of God in their neighborhood like a treasure hidden in the field. And here is their story.
I'm Ruth Rodez Kaminga. I'm from Guatemala and I grew up in Guatemala and in Spain. I moved to the UK in 2018 to do my master's in international social development. And now we are here in London and we are part of Interchange, which is a global order. And we work in Interchange together, but also we serve in our community, in our neighborhood, just as the neighbors. And at the same time, I work as a researcher for a think tank in international social development. So we are new in London.
And I'm Sam from Canada. I was born in an immigrant family from Dutch background, and grew up in Canada and in places where it is super multicultural and you're meeting people from all over the world. Ruth and I met at the Urbana conference, and a couple years after that, we got married in Guatemala. We have been building a home here in London, and we're part of Interchange, which is a global missional order of teams among the poor, based on the values of Micah 6 verse 8, with the focus of cultivating disciples of Jesus on the margins. Some of us are full-time workers, others part-time, others of us have other jobs where we study, etc. So we're part of a team here, the whole mix of people based in Whitechapel here in the neighborhood.
As an intercultural couple, Sam and Ruth were looking for a place to live in where there wouldn't be an exception. Since Ruth was living in the UK already, and London is one of the most culturally diverse places in all of Europe, which also offers good jobs in international development, it seemed only logical to move here. However, London is not just London. Bethnal Green has a very diverse population. Nearly 40% are of Bangladeshi descent and around 50% identify as Muslim. Not far away in Whitechapel is the East London Mosque, one of Europe's largest of its kind. Tower Hamlets, the borough where Bethnal Green and Whitechapel are located, has some of the highest levels of child poverty in the UK, with 9 of the 6 most deprived neighbourhoods of the country, all having child poverty rates of above 50%. When asking why Sam and Ruth chose this area of all places, Sam said,
When we were thinking about getting married, when we were engaged, we desire not just live life on our own, but to have a community around us, to have marriage mentors around us, and also to live in a neighborhood where we can get to know neighbors, and particularly neighbors that wouldn't be going to church or have different life experiences. And here in Bethnal Green, Whitechapel, most of our neighbors are Muslim background. And it's also just a landing spot for newcomers, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers from all over. We like that. Like, we like to get to know people and learn from people and from different experiences, but to also have other Christians to be with us in that and to be living life with us and have support, have accountability, have mentorship even. So that's been a value for us.
I think this neighborhood also has such richness coming from newcomers. And as a newcomer, you want to also be in that place where you feel kind of comfortable. You are new and someone else is new to your neighbors. And I think that has been our experience with asylum seekers. You know, we are all new. We need friends. We need a community. And here we are. Or like the strangers that were around us became our friends. And I think that can happen just in this type of neighborhood. That doesn't happen naturally in other parts of London, when everyone is a very individualistic and is like, yeah, I live in this flat and that's it. But I think here in this neighborhood, you can have a taste of that willingness to have a new friend. And I think that's something very particular from this neighborhood that we have been discovering. And obviously it takes intentionality, but it can happen here in London.
Just a quick recap. Sam and Ruth chose to live in a part of a city where many people wouldn't want to live. They were not only looking for a good church and Christian community, but rather a community of strangers and people of other backgrounds and beliefs. The practical implication for this is not just to live there, but to do life there. Sam and Ruth actively seek to meet people, to invite strangers into their house and to have fellowship with them and go visit and serve others.
London, I mean, like most cities around the world, people can be so busy, right? We're so busy because we need to pay rent. We are working in a career that makes you work maybe extra hours, or you're working towards something. And it makes me think of the parable of the banquet. Like Jesus says, someone threw a banquet, he threw a party, and he sent invites out. And all these people began to make excuses why they couldn't come, you know. Oh, I just bought a field, they check it out. Oh, they have all these reasons why they can't go. And it's strange because typically for our wedding, for example, if like none of our guests who we invited could make it, we probably reschedule, pick a different day. I don't know. But the host doesn't do that, right? He doesn't reschedule the party. He says, okay, then go in the streets and invite the poor, invite those on the margins, invite the outcasts. Basically invite those who are available. And that's been great experience like other places, but also here in London. I think it's easy to become busy, but even ourselves, we really have to try hard not to be too busy, but to be available. And I think we've been finding those people who are available. For example, asylum seekers, that they're not allowed to work. They're just in like kind of a waiting period. They don't have community. They don't have established friends. In the first 6 months, they can't even study. They have nothing really to do. So I think in this neighborhood, we're finding people who are available. I think typically it's people who are marginalized, people who are poor, who are often available, have the gift of time because they're not too occupied with their career or something else.
Now here's Ruth sharing about a banquet experience with a friend from Somalia.
He's a asylum seeker. And I remember one day we were getting ready to host a meeting for Christian. We had the home ready, but everyone canceled it. We got text saying, we can make it. And it was fun because, okay, we left home, we went for a walk, and we ran into this friend. And she was available, and he came over, and we shared with him the food, and it was the first time that we prayed together, and he's Muslim. So it was for us like what Sam was saying, having this encounter with people who are available. So that's something beautiful from this neighborhood.
This whole picture of the banquet made me think about and ponder on the paradox of time. In large parts of the modern world, having time is a synonym for laziness and failure. Even in some Christian circles, you can get the impression that busyness is equivalent to importance. But at the same time, we all know that friendship, building relationships and living in community takes time. Jesus took that time. In the parable, we see that it's the people who are too occupied are the ones who are missing the party.
Last year we met another young man from Syria, Orthodox Christian, was even a monk for some time, and his family experienced actually a good amount of persecution as Christians in Syria. And he didn't leave Syria until much later because he was caring for his family, his elderly parents, and it was his sisters who went to Germany. He stayed behind as the only son to take care of his parents. But then his sister couldn't get her husband to Germany from Syria, so then she ended up going back to take care of parents. And she told him, okay, you should go. And so then he went, and he's got a quite incredible journey from Belarus to the UK. And he spent at least a month in the forest between Belarus and Poland trying to get that across that border. And it's nightmarish. The stories from that, when you hear about people who've gone through that forest and spend winters in that forest and just to try to get into the Polish border. And Poland doesn't want these asylum seekers, and it's actually illegal to help the asylum seekers in Poland. But he got helped by a family. They had him in their home, and they have continued to have asylum seekers. They'll hide in their home and help them continue on their journey, maybe to Germany first. And then we've met some people like him and others who, after experiencing some challenges in Germany, came to the UK. And it's been such a privilege to get to know this guy. He's become a brother, both of us. He's a beautiful, gentle man. And even here, actually, in his hotel, his residence for asylum seekers, he continues to experience Christian persecution because people tell him he's Arab, he should be a Muslim, he's a traitor, he's going to hell, and people have stolen his bike, people have popped his tires, really terrible treatment. But it's been beautiful just seeing this guy. I see him helping other asylum seekers, giving advice, helping them connect with different supports. Our church had a night shelter running through the last winter in partnership with other churches in the neighborhood, a night shelter for people sleeping on the streets. And he was one of the most committed volunteers, both in the evening, cooking, cleaning, meeting people, sleeping overnight to make sure everything's going well, to hoovering in the morning. You know, he's a really beautiful guy. He's become a good brother. He just taught me how to make Arab coffee. The best coffee. Well, he uses Guatemalan beans, but he'll make it in the Syrian way. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful combination. And she said to us, whatever needs to be done, you want help with anything, volunteering, let me know, and he'll do it. But part of it is guys like him and other friends, there's often, if they're not able to study or not able to work, then it's all this free time, and they're looking for community more than just once a week meeting. And it means so much to people, and just like it means so much for us to be invited into a home and to have a real relationship. So we've been really encouraged by him and others that, like, yeah, I have no problem finding volunteers for things anymore, because I know all these guys who are just so helpful, and so they just become such good friends. Even when we moved, we had to move out of our place. We had so much like mold and having issues in our flat in January, and we had to move. And almost all the people helping us move were our asylum seeking friends. They did like 12 nations represented. And even when our moving van didn't show up and we were waiting for hours, it got dark and these guys are still waiting. I was like, guys, I'm so sorry. You can go home. We're taking up your whole day. This is supposed to be a quick move. And he said, no, we're used to waiting. No, we're used to waiting. This is nothing. We don't mind. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing nothing else. I'd just be sitting in my room. And it's, I mean, just the most gracious guys we've met from countries like Somalia, Iran, Syria, Cameroon, El Salvador. They've helped us, right? And they've helped us when we needed help. We've been vulnerable, and it's been just really good for us.
Now, for many, especially young people, it's easy to say, well, I agree, making time and being available is important, but I don't even have any space, nor do I have the money to host people. An issue I personally struggled with when all we had was a small room that served as our bedroom, office, living room, dining room. All we had was our bed and a small desk. How can someone be hospitable under such circumstances?
One mom from Iraq, she's now a single mom. So she's a asylum seeker. And she made an incredible journey from Iraq across Europe. She landed in France, and then in a small boat, she crossed the channel to the UK. And she did that journey when she was pregnant. And when we heard her story, we were so surprised how basically she survived. And now she's here. She lives in a tiny room with his little boy. And she has been one of the persons who has been so willing to welcome us in that tiny room. She can't afford anything, but she can afford like a really nice cup of tea and chocolates, biscuits at her place. And I think it has been beautiful to meet her, and she's open to have us over. That's another thing that you can't find people here in London who's so willing to bring you to your intimate space, you know, to your private space, which will be your home, your dining room, you know. And she has just a tiny room. Where we have been there has been kind of a mess because obviously she got that little boy, but she's available. She wants to hang out. She wants to have us over. And I think it has been just beautiful being hosted by her.
For reference, London is now the temporary home to over 5,000 asylum seekers. Because of a lack of appropriate accommodation, the Home Office has increasingly resorted to using hotels to accommodate asylum seekers. Under these circumstances, people are not able to live independently, they do not have access to facilities to cook their own meals, and are reliant upon accommodation provider for food. People receive support payments of just £8 a week, which is intended to cover the costs of travel, non-subscription medication and clothing. And just to give you a framework of how much that is, the national minimum wage is £10.42 per hour.
It has been the same from our friend from Tanzania. She's also a mom, Muslim mom, with her daughters in Tanzania. And we met her where she was living in the neighborhood. And she has been over like different times in our hub, but also she has been one of the most hospitable person that we have met here. And she has welcomed us in her room and the hotel. What she's offering is what she's receiving for free from the hotel. And she's only receiving £8 per week. And from this £8, she's buying kiwi and a nice biscuit and Pepsi, you know, to welcome us and having us over. And I think for us it has been also a new experience in the way how we are experiencing God's presence with them. So especially when she has been here at home, she has been like saying, I think now I know what to do. One day I want to receive people over. So excuse me, I need to know how to behave because it's the first time that I'm having friends here. And I know that I need to offer these and be available and be like just friend, right? So they have become really good friends of us. We hang out a lot with them.
Part of their story too is not having much freedom. Like they both have had to escape really terrible marriages. They've been like discovering their new freedom. And we feel really privileged to be welcome in their lives and shown hospitality by them. And to us, they remind us of Hagar in Genesis, like the first person in the Bible who gives God a name. She's used and sent away by Abraham and Sarah. And then when she's in the wilderness with her son about to die, God meets with her and says, "You are the God who sees me." And that, I think what we see with these women is a beautiful persistence, but also an example of women. I mean, they're both Muslim women, and the Muslim account of that story is actually quite different. Abraham goes back to get them, to get Hagar, whereas in the Bible, it's God that meets with her. And she's the first one in the Bible to give God a name, the God who sees me. And for us, it's been beautiful to see that God sees them. And they've really been highlighted to us as new friends for us. And I think about, there's some language about asylum seekers. One of the words used are invasions of small boats. And you think about one of those invasions was this 20-year-old mother, pregnant. You think about Mary fleeing persecution as well with Jesus. So she was coming here on a small boat overnight. She's talking about how scared she felt, how dangerous it was. Another pregnant woman had died she was journeying with. And we've been really grateful to get to know her just down the street.
Before we continue with the story, I want to let you know that we want to share mission stories from the Global Church with the Global Church. So if you have a story to share or know someone who might have, please contact us at podcast@lausanne.org. That is podcast@lausanne.org. Sam and Ruth have many other stories to share about how dorm neighbors went from I hate Christians to wanting to read the Bible and giving their lives to Christ. How believers of other faiths have met Jesus in their dreams and then started asking questions about this good shepherd. How refugees start reading the Bible and praying for the first time, and so much more. While I could have just listened to all these stories and be warmed by them, the heart of this podcast is to inspire each believer into action, to take the next step in their context. So I was curious how to go about finding the kingdom of God in my neighborhood. And here's some practical tips they could share with me.
I think saying I don't have time, it's not true. It's not. We have been using that as an excuse, but actually it's not true. I think everyone has some time available. Because when we stop thinking too much about ourselves, is when you see, I have some time free on Saturday. I would say sometimes I get pretty busy. I have a very demanding job. Sometimes I'm finished super tired. And it's very easy for me just to say, I just need to rest this evening. And I would say I take this evenings, but also it brings so much life when I decide to just, let's keep something that will be abundant and let's invite someone over. And that brings some kind of beautiful, restful time that renews you in some way. And I think I think our tendency could be thinking, on Saturday, I'm just going to focus on laundry or these things about family, taking care of myself and doing this. But you can make some room to just say, let's try to meet someone over for a coffee. And our house doesn't need to be super tidy or doesn't need to be like extraordinary prepared. We don't need to create these amazing meals because sometimes these are excuses, like I don't have time to clean the home or I don't have time to cook. And then I would say that first thing is when we stop thinking about us, too much. And I would say that's perhaps one thing. A second thing, I think that something that you also need to start to pray about. As I said before, it won't come naturally. So you need to start to pray. Something that we started to do with as a kind of spiritual discipline is to do prayer walks around the neighborhood. And I remember when we moved here last summer, we didn't have any friends. And we started to walk just around some buildings and say, go, let us meet someone and start a friendship with someone. Can you guide us to those encounters? And I would say that he has been responding to that prayer. And he has been providing to our home as well. And now we have a place where we can also host someone overnight, and that has been a blessing. And we've been praying for that. So I would say the first as well, we need that kind of willingness and that awareness, how we're using our time, and then bring that to God. God, help me, guide me to those encounters. If I don't have perhaps enough room in our place, or if perhaps I'm struggling to get a job, or maybe my income is so low, could you just provide so we can also host? And I think that prayer could be a very practical, simple thing that everyone could do easily. I think when we do that prayer, I think we are reclaiming and saying also that it's going to be His will will be done. And I think in that way we are renouncing to our own will and making a kind of new commitment to see His will active around us. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but so for me, it's coming from, if we want to receive and see his kingdom here, we need to renounce just something that is coming from us and from our, according to our will.
Walking and have with their eyes open and be like, in the parks, on the street, looking for those people who are available. Like, they exist in all of our neighborhoods, but they're going to be different people. And I think as well, when Jesus says, when you throw a party, he assumes we have parties. When you throw a party, don't just invite those who can repay you, invite you back. Invite those who can't. I think that's such a common, it's so easy for us. Like, we're a young married couple. It's easy for us just to invite other Christian married couples over to our home. And all our free time, we're just going to spend with other Christian married couples. Right? That's the natural thing to do. But I think what we've been trying to do is we want to get to know some of these other Christians in our church. Maybe it's like our birthday, or we want to have a party or something. Like, okay, we invite them, but also we're going to invite other people. And in that way too, we're not the only ones too getting to know these neighbors who are asylum seekers. We want to introduce them to our other church friends. We want to introduce them to other Christians. And to mix those groups. It just takes the intentionality of, okay, we could just invite this one couple over, or we can invite as well this single guy who's got nothing to do, who's never met a Christian before, except for us, And we've been recently inspired by a couple of our friends too. She recently decided to quit her job because we're like, you know what, we can survive off just one salary. And these are new Christians, like quite new and good friends of ours. And they've been inspired to, she wants to spend her time with neighbors, cooking for neighbors, supporting neighbors with appointments. We can live more simply off just one salary, or some people will maybe reduce their hours so that you have the time. And that's really beautiful when people can make those decisions, when the assumption is we need to be making more and more money, working more and more because we want upward mobility. We want a bigger place. We want to be more secure financially, when maybe that's not a value of the kingdom. And that's, I think, where the church can really be a gift too. Like, we can use our church space to host English conversation, and we can make a flyer and put it up in the building where asylum seekers are living and see who's interested. We met people that way, in trying to connect our churches with asylum seekers and them with our churches. And so that's something too. There's a unique opportunity to be relational spaces and be on an equal level versus one's a helper, one's a recipient. And then to have a relationship. Okay, if someone has real needs, whether it's advocacy for healthcare or something, or needs a bicycle to get around, or it's out of relationship and in a church community, then we can work together in that. And then it's very natural versus having the weird power dynamic. It's more out of friendship that we can help each other. So I think connecting with the churches is really important for us. And we're connected to 3 churches in our neighborhood that we have friends at and that we're involved with, because we know it's going to be more than just one church. And when people get moved, you want to connect them to another church because they're going to meet Christians. And so trying to blur the lines of the church in a sense of bridge the gaps.
I hope you have been blessed by these inspiring stories and practical tips. Maybe you can start by praying the commitment of celebration that interchange, the global new monastic order among the poor that Sam and Ruth belong to, hold on to. I will celebrate the light of Christ in a world of darkness, the life of Christ in a culture of death, the liberty of Christ in a kingdom of captivity, and the hope of Christ in an age of despair. I will rejoice always and in everything give thanks. Last but not least, I asked both of them about their dream for the future. If they could wish for one thing to happen, this would be it.
For me, my dream is to experience the parable of the banquet as the church. I love parties, and I love that Jesus loves parties. But I guess my dream is that the church experiences the parable of the banquet rather than being secluded from the neighborhood.
I would say that the dream for me is that every household can experience Jesus as the host, but also as the guest. And you can experience that through welcoming strangers to your home.
You've listened to God on the Move, Lausanne Movement podcast, where we want to listen to mission stories from the global church. Through listening to what God is doing around the world, we hope to encourage and challenge the global church to faithful obedience to the Great Commission. So let's accelerate global mission together toward a vision for the gospel for every person, disciple-making churches for every people and place, Christ-like leaders in every church and sector, and kingdom impact in every sphere of society. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us for more.